You know, when I started in sales, we had to memorize a script. It was all about the presentation. It was all about the movements, the hand, the eye contact, all that kind of stuff. Neuro-linguistic programming, you might have heard that. Like, really? Are we going to get it down into programming people? Is that what it's about? I don't think so. But that's what we were taught when I was young. This is back in the 70s, right? We had to learn that kind of stuff. But as time went on, I learned something very important, and that it's not as important to know your product and your service and your company and to make a great presentation. Although all those things are very important and helpful, but what's more important is to know your prospect, to know your customer, to know your client, to really understand them. In order to do that, you need to ask questions. You see, selling isn't about telling, it's about listening. And if you're going to listen, you should ask questions. And if you're going to ask questions, you need to ask good questions. Now, did you know that Jesus, it's on record that he's asked in the Bible 307 questions? He was asked about 183 and he directly answered less than 10. Now, why did Jesus ask so many questions? Do you think maybe he just didn't know stuff? Like, gee, I don't know, where are you from? Or do you think the reason he asked the questions was to be instructive to the person he was asking the questions of, to cause them to think, to cause them to come to a conclusion? Rather than telling them what the answer was, he wanted them to think through it and learn it on their own by him simply asking questions. That is a profoundly important strategy for success in sales. You know, remember Job in the Bible? Because some people say, how many questions do you ask? I ask plenty of questions. Why? Look in the Bible. There's Job, right? He had it tough, right? He had bad things happen. We all know that story, or most of us do. At the end of that, you know, Job's feeling pretty sorry for himself, and you kind of understand why. And God comes and corrects him. But how does he do it? Read it. Read the last few chapters of Job. He asks Job 75 questions in a row. And it wasn't because he didn't know the answer. It was because he wanted Job to think so that he could basically rewire, reprogram himself. He could come to conclusions himself that made sense, and God was showing him the way by getting him to think about things he wasn't thinking about. In sales, asking questions is the most important thing. If you want to come to my 3-day Selling Among Wolves challenge, you're going to learn about the 7 questions Moses had to have answered before going into the Promised Land. Now, that was a big deal. 7 very important questions. When you understand those questions and the implications of those questions, it can literally multiply your sales. I hope to see you at the challenge, 3 days, February 20th, 21st, and 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks and God bless.